Hello and welcome back to the ScholarAI podcast. Lakshay and I are riffing today. All right, Lakshay, you've been in San Francisco for a few weeks, a month,
Yeah,
2 months.
yeah.
How long's it been?
Just moved. It's I think today formally marks 6 days since I drove down from Oregon in my Tesla, which has since been tampered with many times since coming here. um, but I've been in San Francisco proper for 6 weeks now. Been loving it. City's been very very nice. Weather is beautiful. If anything, the thing I'm finding is I kind of came here with the goal of like, oh, we're gonna start building, we're gonna start cranking, like just like get involved in all the startup-y like networking things, right? Um, I've come here, and the thing I'm stunned by is that there's almost too much to do. I've been busy, but in all the wrong ways. It sometimes feels like where I'm like coding, like I'm working on stuff, but I'm meeting people, I'm like going to events, but like all the social stuff, all the learning stuff is just like taking up so much time. I do a little bit of venture, I gotta live a little bit. Um, I'm looking back on the week as like, what did I even do? Like what have I achieved in the last like 2 or 3 weeks? Um, and there are things, but it's all sort of like I'm kind of looking at it as like we're warming up to San Francisco. We're getting really cozy, and we're kind of approaching the state where I'm like, okay, lock it. Let's start cranking again. Let's start like all the coding stuff is out there. Like obviously there's so much hype here. Like I'm going to hackathons. Like let's get busy properly, in the true hacker way. Um, so
Nice.
having too much fun, but
You're incredibly talented, and you're gonna find tons of fun stuff to do, Lakshay.
thank
And
you, thank you.
I hope the break-in into your Tesla wasn't too much of a damper. It sort of perfectly encapsulates like the microcosm of San Francisco with
Yeah.
the kind of lots of fun tech energy and
Yeah.
Tesla break-in.
Yeah, you want the one of the funniest part? I've told this like story in a much more elaborate fashion to a lot of people as I tend to, like with a lot of narrative flourish. But the funniest thing to me is my parents are very very affectionate naturally, and they've driven down to San Francisco like once or twice since I've been here to hang out for a weekend. And my mom was like, "Oh, like I mean in Hindi, mera bacha is like child and like affectionate, whatever. Like mera bacha, like you bought this toothpaste in Oregon and you forgot to carry it down with you." So she brought toothpaste from
Nice,
Oregon all the way to San Francisco to
nice.
give to me. Um, and I got the toothpaste, and I bought toothpaste. Like I didn't need to like have it in my house or whatever. So I just kind of left it in my car when she handed it to me. And in this break-in, the dude took toothpaste of all things. Like I don't have that much valuable stuff in my car, but like taking a tube of Colgate is crazy. Like
Man.
I can't imagine what the guy was like going through his head at like 3 in the morning when he broke into my car saying like, "Oh, that Colgate looks really good." Like what the hell is that?
Oh man, I'm sorry. Well, I hope beyond that small damper, the rest of it has been awesome, and you've
We're
met
having
some
fun.
fun people.
We're
Yeah,
having fun.
yeah. I enjoyed being in San Francisco for a week with you, and I met lots of great people there
Yeah,
too. And I plan to be back regularly, so
yeah.
we can hang as you're there.
Maybe get an in-person episode.
Hey, there you go. Well, crazy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's get into it. So, first thing we're talking about is the Windsurf
Yes.
failed acquisition. So, all right, the date is July 11th, 2025. Windsurf employees show up for an all hands meeting, expecting news of the $3 billion acquisition by OpenAI. Instead, they learned that the deal has collapsed, and CEO and key engineers are joining Google for 2.4 billion. What are you hearing? What's your take on this?
So this is like the main profile announcement like this, but a similar thing also kind of happened with Scale and Facebook actually. Um, so it's kind of like one of two events that in the past like couple of days that's like spooking a lot of SF culture to some extent, where the Windsurf founders have kind of been like scorned a little bit because what you fundamentally done is like you've asked founding engineers to like take the biggest leap on your company like 3 or 4 years ago, like probability of success is like close to zero, but they're like still taking a leap of faith on you as founders anyway. Um, and both the Scale case and the Windsurf case, um, a lot of these guys exit for relative peanuts of what they should have had the acquisition kind of fully gone the way it was supposed to. Um, so Cognition Labs was like kind enough that like they saw that a lot of these founding engineers were kind of left in the dirt, and they kind of like acquired the remaining pieces of Windsurf. So there is some sort of outcome, but a lot of the conversation around like SF right now is about like founding engineer and founder relationship and founding engineer upside. Like, how do you protect it, especially as these acquisitions tend to be more about the leadership than the implementers. So scale, not as prominent, but also kind of similar case. But the Windsurf one was kind of scary and kind of a big upset in that regard.
Do you think that, so when we talked about this before, we talked about Cursor as at that point, this is maybe 2 or 3 months ago, our preferred mode of coding was through Cursor. Not perfect, but created efficiencies. And Windsurf was sort of the number 2 in that market. Yeah. And as this Windsurf acquisition surfaced, our conversation then was, well, how is Windsurf going to operate? Is it going to operate only using OpenAI models after this acquisition? Is it going to operate with everybody's models? And if it is, we're working with everybody's models. And what's really the point of the acquisition from an OpenAI point of view? Because it's not a financial acquisition. It's not enough revenue to make a difference for an OpenAI. So what's the reasoning here? As that happened, Anthropic suggested that they would be holding back their models if the acquisition went through, and some speculate that had an impact on this not going through as a transaction. And I just wonder what you think. Like, we've got this marketplace now with Cursor, with now Windsurf not acquired, other coding tools. Do these have value? Do these have lasting value? Would you be an investor if you have money to invest? Would you invest in any of these IDEs or developer tools?
I mean, I think this space is just so generally hot that like the state of the art for your productivity tool is changing a lot still. Like, I hang around here and like even meeting people, like we'll talk a little bit about Claude Code momentarily, but like Claude Code has entered the vernacular to a great extent. There's a lot of people who code exclusively by Codex, like using OpenAI, right? The idea of like what is state of the art feels like just so competitive. And I think the thing that I look at as happening in this like coding space, like this IDE or like coding copilot opportunity, is most of these acquisitions should be acqui-hires. And I think that's fine, generally. Like, I think that's an okay playbook where like you've accrued enough talent of people who understand the UX of coding and understand the model like implementation of coding, that like acquiring a Windsurf in the shape of an acqui-hire makes a lot of sense. Acquiring a Cursor in the shape of an acqui-hire makes a lot of sense, right? I think the thing that's just like, that's what's most appalling to me about what happened is that you're ditching the founding engineers who 4 years ago have been building expertise on this topic in this acqui-hire. And maybe that just speaks to like, maybe these acquiring companies just believe like the intellectual moat on these topics is just not that high, or state of the art will push beyond like expertise that started 4 years ago. But ditching people who are really passionate about this problem and have been like working it for so long and have been incentivized to work on it for so long, it's just kind of dirty, I guess. Like it's kind of poor play in my eyes, where I don't know why, if you are a like Google, you wouldn't want like a founding engineer from Windsurf, you know? Like, it's an easy hiring posture, if that makes sense. Like, it's talent acquisition that's funneled to you.
Who do you think is to blame for these talented people being kind of left on the sidelines? This was called morally bankrupt by some on X. So is it the CEO's blame? Is it Google's, who came in with the kind of backup plan to acquire the tech? Who's responsible in your mind for these people not being kind of given a fair shake?
I put it pretty squarely on the founders. I mean, like my outlook on founderhood, I suppose, is that like first you're an owner of the vision and then you're a steward of the people, if that makes sense. And if you can't protect your people, then you're doing your job pretty wrong. You know, like, especially like it's pretty I don't think like the Windsurf team was like planning around this. Like the OpenAI thing falling through was unexpected. Like I'm sure the Google thing kind of felt like a sort of Hail Mary that came in last second, or like a last second save. So maybe they just took what they could get, but it's absolutely the sort of thing that like negotiate on behalf of your people. Don't leave them on terms that they didn't agree to without any sort of like legal leverage. There was a Gary Tan tweet that got deleted after like a founding engineer made a post saying like, oh, sounds like a $20 million mistake or something. That was like super, super cryptic and no one really understood what it meant. But that tweet like went away, was never really explained. So I imagine there's like some really weird legal flunkiness going on behind the scenes. That's kind of unbeknownst to a good number of us.
Okay, so macro point here, do any of these coding IDEs have value? Do you think in 5 years, Cursor, Windsurf, any subsequent IDE, does it have value, or does the coding go to the terminal line or an agent that just does it for you? How do you see this market of IDEs?
I think Codex has generally the right approach. If Claude Code became a UI, it'd be in a very, very like explosive posture. Whereas right now it's in a very good posture. I think there's value. The problem, I mean, like this is a broader statement about just like anything that gets popularity today. Is that like if you crack something that's good, you are suddenly like not just racing to keep up your own pace, but racing against like you have a horse and all of a sudden there's like a Nissan GTR coming up behind you. Like there's just so much temptation on like figuring out where the money is in AI that if you're making something that has some level of virality or popularity that sticks, you have to assume the big guys are going to try and pull share from you. Like said one way, Microsoft Copilot, like GitHub Copilot, is all things considered pretty decent at this stage. Like I wouldn't say it's better than what Cursor was at its peak. Like Cursor's kind of slowed down, like their pricing has changed, whatever. But GitHub Copilot, I imagine for the vast majority of people who are like in the enterprise today, is probably like inertia setting enough that you would not really feel a need to go find a new Cursor or something similar for yourself, right? I think that's why like this acqui-hire attitude is becoming more commonplace, because these sort of really horizontal products like coding, horizontal products like productivity, you're kind of bound to get competed with. And one of the best outcomes, I think, is effectively like you're doing a talent show for acqui-hire effectively.
What I find interesting about this story, this Windsurf story, is that we've seen the power of labor versus capital over the last 20 or 30 years. Such that the average value of labor has been on real dollar terms about the same, while the average value of capital has gone up a lot. So as labor has become more productive, the owners of capital, meaning the factories, the companies, have grown in value. So owning the company, owning the factory has increased in value as labor has become more productive with better and better technology. But this is a really great highlight that at the top end of the labor market, the labor has all of the power. And this acqui-hire approach that you're suggesting, what happened here? A $3 billion acquisition, a significant chunk of that would have gone to the VCs. And instead of that, the key people decide we're going to leave this company, the shell of the company behind. The most important people in the company are going to get 2.4 billion. And we're going to leave behind 200 employees and the venture capitalists that put money into this entity and leave the shell of the thing behind. And so instead of getting a $3 billion enterprise value exit, I believe Devon AI's company, Cognition, came in and bought what was left over of Windsurf for a couple $100 million or something. So this dramatic decrease in value of the capital providers in this instance, and the dramatic increase subsequently of value that went to the people who went over to Google, shows kind of the power of labor at the very top end of the market. The Meta hiring, for example, Meta's been hiring people, supposedly, tried to hire the chief engineer at OpenAI for $1 billion. The power of labor at the top end of the AI market is just incredibly valuable, and this just reinforces, underlines the point you're making about acqui-hire.
I think the thing that's interesting to me to like toy around with is, I imagine this conversation has a lot of like founding engineers or like early start enthusiasts kind of like a little bit spooked that this sort of thing can happen, especially like all things considered, like 4 years in this sort of outcome for the founders is really good. Like that's crazy good, right? I guess like how do you look at the general dialogue about like incentivizing founding engineers or founding team members like outside of like the co-founders themselves correctly, right? When like, hey, there's like a weird precedent popping up right now where we've had two of these companies do these sort of like miniature leadership acqui-hires and just pull them out of the company that they're in, leave the scraps behind sort of thing. Do you think that like incentive structure should adjust to be more comp heavy? Do you think the equity structure and how that's granted, the legal terms need to take like a level of refinement? Or what do you think is like the solution to say like, I want to start a company, I want to bring on engineers today, what terms do I tell them they're on?
As I understand it, the key people, the most senior people, got part of that $2.4 billion. So there were hundreds of people, 200 plus people who were left behind, left out of that. But the most senior folks got probably significantly more in this payout from Google than they would have otherwise. So there's some, I wouldn't say it's a blanket like all the founding engineers got screwed over. It doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like many of them got a really big payout anyway, and that some of them got left behind, who were deemed by Google to be less valuable, or by the CEO, who also went over to be the less valuable of the engineers. But in terms of risks in this kind of model, I think one of the biggest risks is as a capital provider, as a VC, as an angel investor. Even if you hit, there's no guarantee that you're going to get any money back out of this thing. In fact, all the great people might leave and leave the shell of the thing behind. Your only recourse, if you're a VC or an angel investor, is to have some kind of non-compete. But now that's not legal in California. So in California, the labor has the power in that context. And so you can't put in a non-compete to say you can't go build the same thing for Google in 6 months. That's not allowed legally. So I don't know how to protect the people who get screwed over in this model. But there are certainly people who get screwed over, not just the labor, but also financial providers.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of follow. I don't know, like I'm hoping that there's some like long debrief that eventually drops on what happened, because again there seems to be like legal mechanics at play that like art cannot be spoken out because of NDAs and such. But I'll be watching Twitter very, very actively. Shall we on the topic of IDEs, have you heard about what's been happening with Cursor?
No, tell me.
Okay. So Cursor, for like, there was a period in June, July where they had a kind of like a pricing change. Obviously, like the tool that runs, like they run it at a burn, absolutely. Like the part of how they distribute so heavily was just kind of access to Claude 3.5 and OpenAI, blah blah blah. For $20 a month. Like it was like a movie pass to like the AI models effectively, and it became a really good idea, like coding tool. But slowly over time, they've had to keep on kind of peeling back, making the model slower, thresholding, limiting,
Okay.
And so there was like a kind of like, not a massive churn event, but they miscommunicated about like a pricing change that caused a lot of sort of like buyer like upset. They kind of reverted on that, but the general tone on Cursor's kind of shifted to like, this tool is kind of slow, it's kind of getting in my way, it's a little bit inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
And along in the last couple of weeks, Claude Code released. Claude Code is not a full IDE, it's just a terminal command. So if you have a terminal open, you just type Claude, and it creates like an interactive like workspace for you effectively, that you can just chat with, right? It takes the terminal and makes it something very, very like traditionally interactable. You're not writing shell scripts, whatever. And Claude Code is very, very good. I don't have like a qualitative or like I don't have a quantitative assessment saying like, oh, it's this much better on these benchmarks, whatever, or it does this much better on XYZ. But like MCP support, all the sort of stuff you love about cursor integrations, Claude Code has. Its ability to understand your workspace is like really, really, really good. Like it runs at really good speed. It's hosted by Claude itself, so there's no rate limiting on their own models. They just take the payment directly. You can add your own API keys, so you can just like pay for it as you use it, rather than needing to be like bound to like, oh, your $20 per month allows this many fast requests or slow requests, whatever. And it's taken what feels like the number one spot of like hacker favored coding tools, which is a pretty big change, obviously from like how much enthusiasm there was on Cursor and like affection there was on Cursor for the longest time. That now Claude Code seems like the people's champion all of a sudden, like in the leaderboard.
Yeah. Personally, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the IDE style of a Cursor or Windsurf, or do you prefer the kind of command line style interface of Claude Code or Codex?
So the one thing I'm still trying to figure out is that like obviously there's Codex, there's Cursor, whatever. So there's terminal, there is IDE integration, and then there's like fully background agent, right? That's what like a Codex is, whatever, where you just chat with it, it just doesn't work on your behalf behind the scenes. I'm still trying to figure out that like I've heard of people still having reasons to use all three. Like I think Codex especially I want to get better with, because that means I can like code while like sitting on a bus. I can just like ask for things and PRs get made behind the scenes. I can review them later. That's really great. Cursor and Claude Code at the same time. The thing I found is that Claude Code is like just so intensely workspace interactive that I'm wary about like running something at the same time on my code as a Cursor. Like Cursor, like because you have that UI, you're able to more clearly visualize what changes are happening. Whereas like if I'm vibe coding with Claude and just like firing stuff off, it's easier to just kind of trust the process, but also be like, I'm not going to mess with what Claude Code's trying to do, because it's also managing its own memory state about what changes it was making. Like there are times saying like, oh, this file looks different from how I edited it. Let me reread it again. So I'm hesitant to like, I've said this on the podcast before, where like I've had periods where I'd have like 7 like Cursor windows open, each one doing a different job. Right now I'm a little hesitant to do the same thing. I haven't tested with it and like actually tried to make it work. But so far it feels like if I were just doing a singular task, Claude Code wins. And I want to try Codex more than I currently have to see what's actually capable of doing.
I haven't used Claude Code. I haven't used Claude Code recently, maybe I haven't used it ever. If I have, it's been more than a couple of weeks ago. I haven't coded in a couple of weeks, but just speaking to Codex versus Cursor, if you know what the code should look like, you're code familiar, I feel like working in Cursor was it was easier to figure out where something was going wrong and what to prompt to change it. And then the biggest problem I had with Codex, I like the Codex kind of style of coding where you can kick off something, it's just going to run in the background. It feels more agentic in a sense. But if you kick off multiple things at the same time, they will, and if you don't have clear boundary lines, they're going to run into the same files. And then you're going to have like several tasks with PRs hitting the same files, and you have this big reconciliation nightmare sometimes. It's just really messy. So it's a nice idea to be able to kick off in Codex like 5 tasks, but chances are they're going to hit the same files, and then chances are you're going to have to reconcile a bunch of changes between multiple PRs, and so it doesn't end up being quite that neat. And in all those cases where it's not perfectly neat, you have to get into the code anyway. And so I found I was just opening Cursor for all of those those conflicts and figuring it out, or prompting to say, okay, there are 3 changes here, reconcile them, like having to prompt for that problem.
I see. Yeah, the thing I think with Codex specifically, the way I've heard people kind of talk about it, I was at like an OpenAI like virtual event yesterday, which was like low-key a waste of time. But they said an interesting note about like how some of their people are operating inside the company, where increasingly so, like the typical developer is kind of like they're taking like you described that user sort of process before, where they like kind of generate a PRD from one of these AI models. They'll have it broken down into like very like atomic like 1-pointer, 2-pointer tickets or something, and they'll hand these 1-pointer or 2-pointer tickets as individual Codex tasks, right? And one of these 1-pointers is like, oh, like change like the nav bar to like have like this animated like floaty thing, right? Another one might be like, hey, make sure that the like button like for this thing is now responsive, you know, like keep it so minimal that like you're able to hopefully fire off like 90 at a time, and they're all just touching like atomic items, you know, that the risk of like something going awry is just so controlled that you can just be like approve versus automatically deploys. And like on the course of your like 30-minute bus ride, you've like changed your app fundamentally.
Yeah. I wish, and I'm sure that these AI labs are working on this. I wish they would focus on making it easier rather than more powerful. I feel like so much of the energy goes into like add horsepower, add this ability and that ability, and instead I wish they would just work on make it easier.
Make an IDE company. You should make an AI IDE. That sounds like a great idea.
I could start with an open source VS Code branch and
fork that. I think there might be like some playbook or something there. Like
Nice. All right, let's go to Cluey. So I've heard lots about Cluey. Lakshay, what's going on with this?
So for the record, like I think this is probably one of the most divisive people in San Francisco. I absolutely love this dude. I've never met him, but it's like on my like bucket list to like meet Roy Lee, because I think he's like so for those who don't know his general story, he did like leak code competitively for a while he's an undergrad. Made a tool to kind of cheat on it, got reprimanded by his university and Amazon at the same time. That went really viral because he shared his like live usage of his tool, put a paywall on said tool, started making $1 million ARR in like 36 days or 40 something days. That like blew up. His general like attitude and like self like composure is like so like degenerate and disrespectful generally. Like it's very like young TikToker sort of energy. He ended up like he's not focused on the interviewing coder company, because obviously like his take on it that's correct is like you release a surf tool, now you're just like in combat with the interviewing systems. What's the point of that? He instead makes Cluey, which is cheat on everything effectively. And like the thing that's really funny is cheat on everything. The only real thing that's like so like different about it is that it is just like a meeting like transcriber effectively. It just gives you notes and commentary in real time, right? Like it can do like a LinkedIn lookup while you and I are talking about Roy Lee. It can go ahead and say like, oh, you and I are talking about like AI government changes. And it can go ahead and like read the document and give us a summary that we can look at on our screen at the same time, right? So like product's okay. Like I'm sure like thousands of people could have come up with it, and there have been so many open source rips of that sort of thing. But the thing that's fascinating is that like Cluey is way more of a brand than it is a company. Like it operates like a media co. I don't know how exposed you are to their social media, but have you like seen any of their stuff?
I've heard they came up with some kind of hack of TikTok or Instagram. What do they do?
They hire like dozens of marketing people and interns. They like basically record everything they do. They create like content like for the sake of like trying to be entertaining on YouTube, like LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever. They like post like in-person parties, like all this sort of stuff. Like they run what sounds like a YouTube channel effectively. They just happen to be a tech company on the outer surface of that. And Silicon Valley either loves or hates them, right? Like if you look at the discussion about like, oh, the cost of intelligence is going to zero, or the cost of writing software is going to zero, like where is value? I look at them as like, they have a correct answer. Like they have a very, very correct answer about like, take up attention and win attention. And they're doing just such a fantastic job where like, I don't think this many startups that are like 5 or 6 months old would worry about having like a marketing budget that is this big, but theirs is gigantic, all things considered, for like a meeting recording app.
Interesting. Interesting. Is this endemic of this generation of like sort of cheat on everything? Do you feel like this is like, it feels like there's something about the ethos of, maybe this is me being a cynical old man, but I feel like this generation sort of feels like the odds were kind of tilted against them in terms of home ownership and a variety of other things in their lives. And there's sort of like an embedded like cynicism, and therefore like the system is rigged. So sort of, cheating the system feels like a totally legitimate thing to do. Ergo, Cluey cheat on everything. Does it sort of fit the ethos?
Like wherever you land on like the generational thing, like to me, I think it's just like given the story this guy had started with about like literally like he got like an expulsion threat from, I believe it's Colombia. It might be Princeton. I think it's Colombia.
Colombia.
But like, Amazon said like you better get rid of this kid or we'll stop recruiting at this university. Blah blah blah. Like, it makes, if he had a PR agent like leaning on like the rebel path kind of thing, like being like a upsetting persona, I think makes a lot of sense for like overall surface area. Like, I think that's just like tactically not correct.
Yeah.
I do think that a lot of people just generally in this generation look at things as like pretty doomed. Where like outlook on like the tech job market, especially for all these people who are studying CS for so long, is kind of like turned. Like, a lot of people are going to startups, but startups don't pay super well, and like the incentives are super backwards, and like playing with like a probability game. Like, I think like generational outlook is a little bit lower, but I look at like what Cluey's like mission statement is of like cheating today is fair tomorrow. Kind of makes sense. Like, I think it's like generally like an okay assessment to think that like 20 years from now, like you'd be able to like get notes on everything happening in front of you in real time.
Yeah,
like that's
seems
just
reasonable.
That'll happen. Yeah, what happens in education? I don't know. What happens in like places like having hyper intelligence in front of you all the time becomes problematic? I don't know, right? But I think like the general ethos of like Roy Lee has postured himself as like a rebel spirit, and his brand is all super like divisive and upset. Like, it's just sort of like attention economy success prone, Like, if they were to spin up like a YouTube channel or their TikTok account or something, like I assume those accounts would probably be worth more than the actual product is in like 5 years.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it feels like it. I agree with the inevitability, especially as you get to glasses and other form factors that are more hidden and invisible over time. Yeah, you're going to have some kind of super intelligence always in front of you and available, and all the systems are going to have to adapt: education, healthcare, etc. What's the takeaway that for you? Like, what do you want to replicate or borrow from the Cluey story?
I think anyone who's my age or younger, everyone just kind of grew up with like content as like a representation of like life in a weird way. Where like we grew up on YouTube, the generation below me grew up on TikTok, right? Where you have examples of all these people like living out like hyperbolic lifestyles, and like people love following drama, they love following stories. And I think in general, the way I look at it is that like in being a founder, there is underappreciated value in being a really good storyteller. I think content and marketing is hard. Like, getting that right is really hard. But I think like there's an underappreciated asset in having a company that has like an audience formally, not just insofar as like buyers and users of your product, but like you have people who want to follow along with the journey of what you are creating and follow the people and key personas in like a protagonistic fashion, if that makes sense. Cluey kind of stumbled into like this like pretty epic story opening, all things considered, so you can't really like force something like that. But I think the premise of like, we're seeing this more and more where like I think more and more founders are also kind of becoming content creators for their own company, which is like a new phenomenon, like a really, really new phenomenon. That's just kind of waiting to like have more than just Cluey be the face of it.
Nice. Well, on an outro note, I've been reading this book that I've really enjoyed. It's a book of short stories. Have you read Ted Chiang's The Stories of Your Life and Others? It's really well done, and I'll just share this. So the most famous one is called Story of Your Life, which was later adapted into Arrival, the movie with Amy Adams. But it's even more beautifully and intelligently done as a short story. But it's not the only one. And in fact, there's several here that I've liked at least as much as Story of Your Life. So I just want to throw this out as a book rack, something I've really been enjoying. I think reading and storytelling are just so important in the current environment, and finding great stories and great storytellers is really important. So I'm trying to surround myself with great stories and storytellers, and kind of just try to borrow little things from those stories. So anyway, this is a great read. Highly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe there will be a chance to tell some ScholarAI stories on this channel eventually. Maybe
that'd be great.
To kick things off.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for joining us on the ScholarAI Founders Pod. Catch us next time. See ya.